Hi, so we're going to talk about colonization in America. This is going to be really quick. These are the key concepts. And Europeans wanted to colonize to spread Christianity, bring back gold, and raise their power or status in Europe. They had new technology, and feudalism, primogeniture, and poor conditions were social reasons as to why they wanted to start colonizing the New World. Spanish colonization, basically, you just want to know that their main goal in the Americas was to conquer the lands. Columbian exchange was the exchange of disease, animals, and plants between the New and Old World. This brought about many systems that forced natives into Christianity or to work for the Spanish. French colonization was very nice. They mainly went there for trade. They had good relations with the natives, and they were nicer in teaching the natives about Christianity. Dutch colonization, not a lot of Dutch settled in the Netherlands and New Amsterdam because there was bad soil and they had many conflicts with the local tribes. British colonization, it was caused by a Spanish Armada defeat, a large population growth, especially in the cities at this time. There are many economic opportunities because of the new land in the Americas and of religious freedom. This brought about mass death for the Native Americans. It gave them farm animals, firearms, and alcohol. For the British, however, it made them a global empire, and it changed from mercantilism to capitalism, and it encouraged emigration to the Americas. The southern colonies were mainly based on a plantation economy, meaning that they grew agriculture, they used slaves, they were spread out over their vast land, so they didn't really have close-knit communities. They had little diversity. Virginia was the first to be settled in. This is where Jamestown is located. The Virginia Charter means that the men in Jamestown were equal to the men back in England. The Powhatan Confederacy were this powerful tribe that gave them trouble and almost killed Jamestown. John Smith he created an egalitarian society by making everyone work so that they could eat. And speaking of Indian troubles or Native American troubles, John Rolfe helped to solve that by marrying Pocahontas, and he also introduced a tougher strain of tobacco, which improved Jamestown's economic situation. Southern society was based on indentured servitude and brought about the headright system, which was used to attract people to America to help with the labor shortage. And this led to Bacon's Rebellion because indentured servants weren't allowed to vote. It was very violent, and it was led by Nathaniel Bacon. And this brought about chattel slavery because farmers and landowners realized that they didn't want their workers to protest or have any power against them, so they brought in African American slaves. Slavery in the South was mainly used in the West Indies at this time, and that's where many of the African American slaves were. Jamestown was the first to be sent black slaves in the colonies. Chattel slavery is basically where if you can do it to a cow, you can do it to a slave. Slave codes were used to contain the slaves, and African Americans resisted this by creating Afro-Christianity and Gullah, their own language. The New England colonies were up in the north. They had very large families because of their population. They had close-knit communities. They stressed education for everyone, poor, rich, men and female. They believed in democracy. They didn't really need slavery because they were a fishing and shipping economy, and they are the least diverse region, which is kind of bad if you think about it. Pilgrims came to Plymouth Colony in 1620. The Mayflower Compact was the first democratic institution in the colonies, and it basically said that there is universal male suffrage, and it was a majority rule. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was a fail, because they were based on theocracy, which was threatened by migration because there were non-Puritans and Puritans coming, and it was just a mess. The middle colonies were a combination of both New England and the southern colonies. They had agriculture and shipping for economy, and they had a very diverse population. For example, Pennsylvania, they had the Quakers, excuse me, they were known as the Holy Experiment, and I'm going to describe them as the millennials of this period because they are very liberal and they believe in equality and they're just good people. Philadelphia was known as a cosmopolitan city and attracted many people. The New Netherlands became New York because the British took control without any fighting because the Dutch were kind of just like, whatever. They don't really have any settlers for this land, but the Dutch were allowed to keep their businesses in New York. Colonial America, there was a huge population boom. It was known as the melting pot because of the massive emigration there. Germans, French people, English people, Irish people, the Dutch, a lot of people traveled there, and there were also Native Americans and African Americans in there. This brought about a more unique society because of the mixing of cultures with the English. And their social structure was based on this. First, there was the small upper class. There were lots of young farmers, our favorite. There were merchants and laborers, indentured servants, and slaves. This is called stratification. They tried American nobility, but it didn't really work out as it did in England. The frontier was farther away from the coastline, so they had less contact with Britain, which made them seem less civilized. The Atlantic economy was, there were navigation acts that Britain put in place so that the American colonies would only trade with Britain, but they didn't really do that. So Britain had salutary neglect, which is where they allowed America to trade, or they pretended that they didn't know, because if America's economy grew, then so did Britain's. This also brought about triangular trade, which included the slaves. And their lifestyle, they had the highest standard of living. They had traditional family roles. New England had public religious education. The middle colonies had some religious, some secular, and some private, some public. And the southern education was very limited to the rich. Some important rebellions and wars. The Southern Rebellion was led by Cato, and he was an African-American slave looking for freedom. The Pequot Wars, where the American colonists actually were allied with the Native Americans against the Pequots, and the Pequots were basically annihilated. Metacom's Rebellion, or King Philip's War, this is where Metacom, a chief tribe leader, he tried to unite all the Native American tribes to protect themselves, but they attacked the settlers, and the settlers attacked back, and eventually Metacom lost. And the Pueblo Revolt is, this happens with the Spaniards. Basically, the Native Americans, they were tired and they revolted because they had guns, and they won this one, which makes it different, and they were able to keep their culture. Colonial politics and power. There was the John Peter Zenger trial, which allowed for free speech, or freedom of speech in press. There's the New England Confederation, which was basically a confederation of the New England colonies to self-govern themselves and to protect themselves. But the Dominion of New England was set in place by the British officials in the colonies to try and get the colonies to stop what they were doing, because they wanted Britain to still have control over them. To have Britain to still have control over them, politics and power-wise. And lastly, the Enlightenment and Great Awakening. The Enlightenment was an age of optimism that came from realizing the need for reform, and this plays a huge part in the American Revolution, and so does the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening came with the mixing of cultures. They pressured religion more, and it united the people to go against the natives. For example, good enlightened thinkers were Descartes, Locke, and Rousseau. Rousseau brought about checks and balances, I believe, because Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he has 3 names, and then the Great Awakening, there is Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, which pressured religion and made people want to, it made people want to focus on religion more, basically. And looks like we're about to reach 10 minutes here, so thank you for tuning in.